Hello and welcome to this Friday's episode of Sports Corner. I'm Cole Young and we have reached the Final Four for two different playoffs, so I'll start right there and I'll dive a little bit into the history of how all these teams got to where they are today. In the NBA, the Celtics, Pacers, Mavericks, and Timberwolves are the four remaining teams in the playoffs. Starting with the East, the Celtics and Pacers began their series on Tuesday night. The Celtics have advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals for the third consecutive season and sixth time in 8 years. It's worth noting that the Celtics are regarded as one of the most successful NBA teams in NBA history and are tied with the Lakers for the most NBA championships with 17. I mentioned it a few weeks back, but the Celtics were by far the best team in the NBA during the regular season. They were pretty much expected to basically coast through the playoffs, and to this point they sort of have, beating both the Heat and Cavaliers 4-1. On the other hand, the Pacers have fought and scraped to get to this point, not just this season, but historically. The Pacers have never won an NBA title. They are one of 10 teams still without a championship, including the Minnesota Timberwolves. They made the conference finals a total of 9 times, including this year, but have only made it to the finals once in the 1999-2000 season, where they lost to the Lakers. This year, they've made it this far by beating the Bucks 4-2, then going to Game 7 with the Knicks and eventually winning 4-3. And in Game 1 with the Celtics, they fought until the last second. The game was back and forth all game, entering halftime all tied up at 64. With 6.1 seconds remaining, the Pacers were up by 3, and Jaylen Brown took the inbound pass and drilled a contested three-pointer to tie the game and force overtime. The game stayed close in overtime, but Boston went on to win 133-128. Jason Tatum scored 36 points, including 10 in overtime. Drew Holiday added a season-high 28 points, and Jaylen Brown finished with 26. All three of those players also had 3 steals, meaning the Celtics became the first team in NBA playoff history to have 3 players record 25 points and 3 steals in a game. Game 2 was last night, and the Celtics have quickly jumped out to a 2-0 lead in this series. Game 3 will head to Indiana tomorrow night and can be seen on ABC at 5:30 p.m. Over in the Western Conference, the world was shocked when the Minnesota Timberwolves pulled off a 20-point comeback victory to upset the reigning champion Denver Nuggets in Game 7. As I kind of mentioned before, the Timberwolves are also one of the biggest underdogs in the playoffs and honestly in NBA history. Minnesota made their first playoff appearance in 1996, but lost in the first round every year until they finally made it to the conference finals in 2003, where they would lose to the Lakers. If you haven't noticed, there's a bit of a trend here with the Lakers. Anyway, that was the Timberwolves' only conference finals appearance in history, and they wouldn't make the playoffs again until 2017. Now, they're back in the conference finals for just the second time in franchise history. But in their way of their first finals appearance ever stands the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks have made it to the conference finals 5 times, resulting in 2 finals appearances and 1 Larry O'Brien trophy in the 2010 season when they upset the Big Three and the Miami Heat. In this year's second round, the Mavericks also pulled off the upset, eliminating the number 1 seed Oklahoma City Thunder by 1 point in Game 6 of their series. The Timberwolves and Mavericks were set to square off in what will end up being a pretty interesting series, and Game 1 was Wednesday night in Minnesota. Luka Doncic had 15 of his 33 points in the fourth quarter, and Kyrie Irving scored 24 of his 30 in the first half to lift the Mavericks to a 108-105 victory over the Timberwolves in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards were scoring at will for the Timberwolves, and they led by 4 with 3 minutes remaining in the game, but the Mavericks then went on an 8-0 run that lasted until there were only 10 seconds remaining in the game. It was a close battle, but the Mavericks are up 1-0. Game 2 of this series will be tonight at 5:30 p.m. on TNT. Be sure to tune in to every conference finals game for the next week or so to see which teams will advance to the NBA Finals and compete for the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Game 1 of the finals will be on June 6th. If I had to make a prediction, I'd say the Timberwolves and Celtics will be in the final round. A few weeks back, I said it would be the Celtics and the Nuggets, so I still have a chance to be at least half right. An interesting note about the finals. No matter who comes out on top of the league this year, this will mark the 6th different team to win a championship in the last 6 years. The Toronto Raptors won in 2019, followed by the Lakers in 2020, then the Bucks won in 2021, the Warriors in 22, and the Nuggets last year. This year, it will obviously be either the Celtics, Pacers, Mavericks, or Timberwolves. Anyway, moving on to hockey, the final teams remaining in the Stanley Cup playoffs are the Dallas Stars, Edmonton Oilers, Florida Panthers, and New York Rangers. For the first time in NHL history, all 4 teams in the conference finals are looking to win their first championship in at least 20 years. In the East, the Panthers have made it to this point after eliminating the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-1 and the Boston Bruins 4-2. This is just the third time the Panthers have made it to the conference championships and second time in 2 seasons after they lost in the Stanley Cup Finals last season to the Vegas Golden Knights. So, the Panthers are on a revenge tour after they were just a few games away from their first ever Stanley Cup last season. But, in their way stands the 4-time Stanley Cup champions, the New York Rangers. The Rangers are in the Eastern Conference Final for the second time in just 3 years and 5th time since 2012. This is just the second time ever these two teams have met in the playoffs, the first occurrence being a Rangers 5-game series win in the 1997 Eastern Conference quarterfinal. In Game 1 on Wednesday night, Matthew Tkachuk set the tone, scoring a goal and an assist as the Panthers breezed through Game 1, beating the Rangers 3-0. While that score makes it seem like a blowout, it was just 1-0 until 17 minutes into the third period when Carter Verhaeghe made it 2-0. Sam Bennett then scored on an empty net 2 minutes later, and the victory was sealed. Game 2 will be tonight at 5 p.m. on ESPN. In the West, we'll get the much-anticipated matchup of the Dallas Stars and Edmonton Oilers. The Stars are probably the best overall team remaining in the playoffs, and this is their 13th appearance in the conference finals. They won their only Stanley Cup back in the 1998 season and are looking to add to their trophy case this year. They battled with the reigning champion Golden Knights in the first round, barely making it out of Game 7. Dallas then fought with the Colorado Avalanche, defeating them 4-2. Now, they're set to square off with the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers breezed past the LA Kings in the first round, then narrowly survived Game 7 with the Canucks to punch their ticket into the conference finals. The Oilers have 5 Stanley Cups in franchise history, but Edmonton hasn't reached the Cup final since losing to the Carolina Hurricanes in 2006. They're now seeking their first championship appearance since 2006 and their first Stanley Cup since 1990. Game 1 of this series was last night, and the Oilers picked up a win on the road in Dallas. Game 2 will be tomorrow at 5 p.m. on TNT. Last week, I mentioned all the mayhem going on in the English Premier League. But after all the dust has settled, Manchester City have been crowned the 2023-2024 Premier League champions, becoming the first men's team in the history of English football to win 4 top-flight titles in a row. The 3-1 final day victory over West Ham sealed the championship, with Man City finishing 2 points ahead of second-place Arsenal. At the bottom of the table, Luton Town, Burnley, and Sheffield United have been relegated to the Championship League. Lastly, there are a ton of big-name races this weekend. The Indy 500 will be this Sunday, as well as the famous F1 Monaco Grand Prix and the NASCAR Coca-Cola 600. So, if you're a fan of motorsports, you will have your hands full this weekend. With all that said, enjoy all the basketball, hockey, racing, baseball, and so much more this weekend. Come right back next Friday for all the news and updates. As always, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Sports Corner. I'm Cole Young. Happy Memorial Day weekend. I'll see you next time.